Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our STS-132 Flight Readiness Review News Conference. We're here today to talk about the results of the meeting, and joining us today are NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Operations, Mr. Bill Gerstenmaier.
Evening.
Space Shuttle Program Manager, John Shannon. And Space Shuttle Launch Director, Mike Leinbach.
Good afternoon.
We'll begin with some opening comments, and then we'll be happy to take your questions. Mr. Gerstenmaier.
Thanks, Mike. Again, we had a very thorough review today. We went through all the things that have happened on the vehicle, both the shuttle and also the station. In general, the station is in very good shape. All the basic life support systems are functioning. The urine processor, the water processor, the oxygen generation system, the carbon dioxide removal system, they're all up and operating. They're not maybe operating 100%, but they're all functioning and doing the job that they need to go do. And I think we're really kind of learning how to operate in space and how to fix systems. If you remember during the last flight, the nitrogen valve on the ammonia system failed to open, or the regulator failed to control the pressure to the ammonia system. The teams were able to fix that during a cold period, and they've got that system functioning, and now it's up and operating. So again, I think there's something to be learned here, the way we operate in space for long duration. When you've cut the ability to go bring the vehicle back or bring the hardware back, continuing to pursue things, spending extra time to work on things is really an effective way to manage things. So that was very good. On the shuttle side, the teams have done a phenomenal job down here. Again, the vehicle is ready to go fly, is a true testament to the work that the teams have done down here at the Cape. I watched the status reports each day, and the propellant loading was full of challenges with quick disconnects and GSE, and Mike and the teams down here just did a phenomenal job of handling each one of those items and working forward. The program gave them some extra challenges with some ceramic plugs that John will talk to you about a little bit that fit in some of our tile, and they did some extra installations of those. They did some inspections on those, and again, the team down here has just done a phenomenal job. And it's also a real testimony to the last flight. We're not many days from the last landing, and here we are getting ready to go launch again, and that's only possible because the other vehicle worked so smooth. And again, the teams have done a phenomenal job with the KU band antenna. They found the problem. They've isolated it to a particular transistor in the outside of the deployed unit, which is unbelievable work for them to know already at this point what the failure is and the implications. So we had a very good review. I think we're ready to go fly. I continue to kind of push on the team to make sure we haven't forgotten anything, that we're not taking things easy, we're not rushing into things, and I see no indications of those. Again, I ask you to take a good hard look at the videos for this flight, the EVAs. They are not trivial at all on station. The battery installation, the KU band install are pretty amazing EVAs, especially EVA number 1. If you look at the arm activities and where the crew members are and how they're maneuvered back and forth across station on the arm, it's a pretty eye-opening EVA if you take a look at those activities. So again, a very good review, and we set the launch date for May 14th at 2:20 p.m. John?
You didn't leave me much. That was great. It was a very smooth flight readiness review. I am amazed at this team because Discovery did just land 15 days ago. We're the beneficiaries of its very trouble-free mission. Atlantis has had a very trouble-free processing flow. We had some weather trying to roll out. Mike can tell you about that, and then what Gerst talked about with the propellant loading. But it's the team came to me about 2 weeks ago and said we only have one contingency day, and we've carried one contingency day throughout, and we've given them extra work, and they've overcome problems, and they're just a very mature, efficient, unbelievable team. 2 issues we talked about that Bill mentioned. One was the KU band communications antenna that we use to bring down video and high rate data. The team was able to actually get in Discovery, take out the electronics box, send it to our logistics depot where we troubleshoot electronics. They already identified the failed component. We took a look at the testing that we did for Atlantis' KU band antenna. We don't see any issues there, although we didn't see them on Discovery either. So we're susceptible to maybe a transistor failing, but it's good to know that it was not some other problem, that this was just a random electronics kind of failure. we feel pretty good about how we're going into launch of Atlantis with the KU band. Bill talked about the ceramic plugs. They're these. I got one, so I'm gonna pull it out here. They put these little ceramic plugs over fasteners around the tiles that go around the windows. And sorry, Mike, I didn't tell him I was going to show up, but they're just real little bitty ceramic plugs that are threaded, and there's an insert over the fastener, and there you go. They're little bitty guys. What happened on this last flight is we had one of these leave the vehicle during re-entry. We think pretty late in re-entry, and so we had a lot of discussion about how they're secured in. We actually use a cord to increase the friction, and when we did some bench tests, we didn't like the results. So what we asked Mike's team to go do is go replace all of them around the windows and the forward RCS system here recently with a little bit thicker cord that gave us more friction, so that we will not have those issues anymore. And we ran through that in great detail. And the team was happy with that story and where we are and the testing that was done on it. And I think they'll finish up that work probably today. So it was that was a good discussion. So very few issues, very few things going on. This is a very exciting mission. It's nice that that we have this for the team to go and execute for Atlantis' last scheduled mission. 12 days, 3 EVAs, tons of robotics. We're putting on spares that make us feel good about the long-term sustainability of ISS, replacing batteries that have been up there for a while, docking a Russian-built ISS module. This flight has a little bit of everything, and it's been a great preparation for the team. About all new that I can add is kind of the tone of the meeting was extremely positive. Nobody mentioned, and it wasn't purposely avoiding it, but nobody mentioned this was Atlantis' last planned flight. It's just folks are so focused in doing their jobs, and they're performing with such pride all the way to the end, that it's just normal business. And the team's very mature and is looking at the data and looking for things they can do. It's, you might ask, well, did you really have to go and replace all of the braided cord on all of these plugs, which have performed pretty well in the past? And the answer was, well, we think we'll make it better, and because it'll make it better, then we're going to go do it, and that's the kind of attitude this team has, and they're such an asset to human spaceflight, and I could not be more proud of them. So we're ready to go next Friday. It's 15 days since we last landed, 9 days till we launch. This is the kind of pace that this team thrives on. Mike.
Okay, thanks, John. Well, I'd like to recognize 2 people from the Atlantis team for all the work that's been done out at the launch pad to recover from 2 days late rolling out from the VAB, as was mentioned. Angie Brewer, the flow director on the NASA side, and Jim Taylor, the integrated flow manager on United Space Alliance, have both done an outstanding job of dealing with the different challenges that we presented them, the additional work that you just heard about. And they've maintained that schedule. We do have one more contingency day left. It'll be this Saturday, so we'll be able to give the whole team a day off and get into launch countdown mid next week and looking for a T0 on Friday the 14th. The remaining pad flow is very standard for us. We completed our ordnance installation Monday night. We'll get into the aft closeout and payload operations today and tomorrow and Friday, and then come back next week, pressurize the high pressure tanks on the orbiter, and then be ready for launch countdown. So right now we've overcome a lot of challenges at the pad, and those 2 folks have led their team through this extremely well. I'm grateful to be able to recognize them, and they've done a superb job along with everybody else. So we're ready to go. We're not tracking anything right now at the launch pad that would represent a constraint, and we're feeling good about Atlantis launching a week from Friday.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll take questions here at Kennedy Space Center, and we'd ask for you to please identify yourself and your affiliation and to whom your question is addressed. And let's start with Marcia.
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press, with short question and a longer question. Could you just say how many days you have to keep trying until you'd have to stand down for whatever reason over the next few weeks? Or
Yeah, there are a couple things that get us. There's a Delta on the range. Their launch date is the 20th, and in order to reconfigure the range for them, we can't launch after the 18th. We have the 18th as a launch date, And so starting on the 14th, we have 4 attempts in 5 days, and then we'd have to stand down for the Delta. And then a lot of other constraints kind of kick in after the 18th and the 20th, and that says we wouldn't be able to get back on until sometime in June. But our history says that 4 attempts in 5 days is plenty for us, and barring some major issue, we should be in good shape.
At the beginning of June?
I think it's the end. Yeah, it's the end of June.
Oh, the end of June.
Yeah.
June 29th.
29th. Probably for Bill, I know that, there are only 3 scheduled flights left, but Jerry Ross would like to see one last hurrah for Atlantis, as he put it, Monday. And if that were to come about, would it be a crew of 4, as we've heard, and how would you manage their rescue if that were to be needed? And how would you manage that flight if somebody said, go for it?
It would probably be a crew of 4, and that would be driven by the fact we would use potentially Soyuz vehicles to return crew if they got stranded on orbit. We've been looking at that. We can fly a Soyuz up with 2 crew members, return 1, or fly it up with 1 crew member and then return 2. So we'd have to work all that out. I don't know if we'd protect all that formally with the Russians. I don't know if we would do all the contract mods and those things. But, we would look at it. We're also looking, again, just at our CSCS requirement. We're looking at how the tank performed this last time. We're looking at what we're seeing on the orbiter. We're evaluating what we really get from CSCS protection. This time we're very lucky in the fact that we have a very robust station. We have 125 days on orbit capability for all the crew members on this flight to stay from a CSCS standpoint. So we can support all the way till the September 16th date. So we can accommodate that very well. We think that can get expanded even more as the station systems get more robust. So we think we've got a plan that provides some capability, and we'd have to still review that with a lot of people if we were going to make this flight a real flight.
Who would be these 4 people? Have you any clue?
We've had no discussions on that.
Bill Harwood?
Bill Harwood, CBS. First for Mike, as John said, this is a nice fast pace, and you guys like that, but then you're going into a pretty long downtime or hiatus before the next flight. So is that an issue for you for the teams, keep everybody toasty and ready to go whenever 133 goes?
Well, not really. From the launch team perspective, we'll throw in more simulations, more training runs for the team. The processing guys, they go through their standard training regimen, and their periodic recertifications are required, so they'll be going through all those. We've gone through downtimes in the past, obviously, and it has not been a problem for us. So I would expect more launch count sims this summer, that type of thing.
And one for John. I guess this was the same type of transistor in the KU that failed back in '92, even though it's not in the same place. Statistically, I would guess the odds of another one failing on this flight are probably 0, but just so I know, there's nothing on this flight that requires K. In other words, if you had the same problem on this flight, you could still execute this mission the way you've got it laid out.
Yeah, the transistor is a different but similar build of the one that failed on STS 91, I think it was. And if we had the same kind, so there is some potential that you could lose the KU. The team did a marvelous job last flight of working around it, getting all of the inspection data down. The crew flew the rendezvous without the rendezvous radar, did an outstanding job. So you would see the exact same thing on this flight if that were to occur.
James?
James Dean with Florida Today with a few, hopefully, pretty quick questions. First, I was just curious. I didn't understand why the MRM is, why the shuttle is launching this MRM when the first one got up there separately.
Again, in our discussions with the Russians, they were going to have to use a Proton vehicle to go ahead and launch this vehicle, so they saw it advantageous to use the shuttle to do that. We were able to put a little bit over a metric ton, about a metric ton and a half of U.S. cargo inside the MRM. So it's kind of a unique mixture for us. You could think of it almost like an MPLM in a sense, filled with U.S. cargo. In fact, it's so filled with cargo that the crew's going to have to start unloading it during this mission, and then they won't get it totally unloaded before the Soyuz is going to come up and dock to it here in June. So there's a pretty quick timeline of getting all the stuff out of there, but it's filled with U.S. equipment, so it was a nice mix between the Russians and us. They needed the module launched. We were able to launch it. We were able to fill it full of our cargo. So in the spirit of international cooperation, we worked out a very nice approach with them to take effective use of the shuttle that meets our needs and meets their needs as well. So again, we treat station and treat transportation as an international activity. How can we optimize that for the partnership? And this is a nice way to do that.
Thanks for Mike Lomback. Looking ahead a little bit, when Atlantis returns, I was just wondering how far into the LON flow will it go? Will it be prepared right up to roll over, and will its stack be fully stacked in the VAB until that decision is made, or will it only go so far before you know?
Well, we'll be processing her as if it's a real flight to begin with. Somewhere along the line, we expect to hear whether we're going to launch or not, and at that point in time, we'd either press on or stop that processing. But in order to support that, obviously, we have to press on when she gets home. Maybe a little bit expanded out. I'm not quite sure yet, but we need to go through the normal deservicing steps, obviously, after the orbiter comes home first. Get the payload and equipment out, that type of thing. So basically, to answer your question, we have to prepare Atlantis and the stack as if we're going to fly again, because it is the LON mission. So with that, we need to be ready to go.
Irene?
Thanks. Irene Klotz with Reuters. I have a couple for Bill and then I think one for John. When's the Rassvet supposed to be used for the first time?
It's going to be, we'll actually ingress it during this mission, and the crews will start unpacking during this.
Will it be used as a docking port?
It'll be used for the Soyuz launch on, I think the launch is June 14th. So it's the June Soyuz. The first Soyuz will dock to it at that point. It also has on the outside, it has a radiator that's going to be potentially attached to the MLM module, which is supposed to launch in 2012. It also contains spare parts for the robotic, European robotic arm on the outside. It also carries a workstation on the outside for the robotic arm that goes on the MLM module out in the future. So it carries some components for future Russian modules well in the future. It carries U.S. cargo on the inside, and it'll be used for docking in June.
And then, the other question for you is that there's going to be about 4 months if the shuttle launches as planned in May before you get back up there again. Is there anything that you're have changed as far as in this mission for 132 with how you want to leave the station because you're not going to be back with the shuttle crew for 4 months?
Yeah, we kind of looked at that to see if there's anything unique we needed to do from either a resupply or consumable standpoint or anything on station. And we talked to the station team about that. I think they're in good shape with their consumables, good shape with all their systems to go ahead and fly through the summer period. And there'll be some EVAs during the summer. There's the Russian Soyuz landing in June and then a launch in June. And so it's a pretty busy time for station. There's also some progress launches. There's probably some kind of transportation activity going on with station almost every 3 weeks this year. So it's a pretty busy time for station, but I think that it's another good chance also to get a lot of research done. So we're going to have a lot of research pre-positioned on station, so we'll be able to really start doing a lot of quality science on board station with the crew over the summer. So I think we're ready for this period on board station, and we'll make really effective use of station during this time.
Thanks. And for John, how much money would be needed to fly the 135 flight? And are there any, can you just give us a little update on if there's any work ongoing on kind of unmanned shuttle or shuttle C or side mount shuttle, kind of in the heavy lift mode of things that was brought up, I guess, with the new budget rollout? Thanks.
Sure. The question on what would it cost to go fly 135 is completely a function of when you go fly it, and you would, if you flew it, in calendar year 11, we think we can get the team down to, from our current monthly spend rate of about $200 million a month down into the $175 million a month, maybe even a little bit less than that. That's just through our workforce reduction. So it would depend on when the mission were scheduled and how long we would keep the team employed, and that's a fairly easy thing to determine. Your other question was about other studies that have been going on out there. All of the studies that were internal to the shuttle program were done as a result of questions from the transition team back when the administration changed, or from the Augustine Commission, and that work wrapped up fairly quickly. And we've documented all of that work, but there's no additional work ongoing right now. Unmanned shuttles been discussed for years and years and years. We're not doing anything actively with that right now at all. Other than when we did return to flight, we developed the capability to fly a vehicle back unmanned and put that cabling up on station to be able to do that. So we still have that capability, but other than that, we have not done anything.
Take a question from Todd, and then we'll take a question after that from our phone bridge. Todd?
Okay, Todd Halverson of Florida Today, and I actually have a couple if I could. The first one's for John Shannon. I'm wondering if you could further elaborate on the little slithers of opportunity in late November and December to fly the STS-134 mission. Could you give me an idea of what's out there as the constraints and what little time periods you have to work with?
No, I screwed up. I didn't bring my manifest chart that has all the different constraints. Do you have it, Bill?
I got it somewhere.
Can we get back to you on that?
In the meantime,
While we screw up.
in the meantime, I'm going to ask Bill Gerstenmaier a question while he's trying to
He's
flip
looking
through
to answer
that
my question.
to answer your question. And maybe I'll just ask Mike Leinbach something in the meantime. Mike,
Go to the third guy, that's fine.
I'm just wondering, how you personally feel after all of these years as you're about to do one of the first lasts in terms of the shuttle program, the last flight of Shuttle Atlantis, which you've been involved with that bird for a long time.
Well, yeah, all of us have been. It's not me by any means. It's the whole team has been involved with Atlantis since its first mission in 1985. I was just looking at the previous missions of Atlantis and reminiscing a little bit. Yeah, she's been around a long time, and a lot of us have known that ship for 25 years. So it'll be bittersweet, to be sure. She's flown 31 times already, 115 million miles. From a number of flight perspective, about a third of her design life, so just kind of a third of the way through now. But our mission is coming to an end, and so we're coming to grips with that. The team is very professional, and we know it's the last one probably, but that doesn't affect the way we process or launch this thing. We're going to do it. We're going to do it safely and surely, and we hope we do it next Friday. It'll be bittersweet, to be sure.
Okay, and we can answer your manifest question.
Did I stall long enough?
Yes,
Yeah, you did good. We have a beta cutout from November 7th through the 23rd of November, so that means we have to be after the 23rd of November. Then there's a Soyuz activity that runs from the 24th to the 26th. So then that leaves us open November 27th through December 8th is the real window. Then the 9th to the 12th of December is another Soyuz docking activity, which we might be able to negotiate something with, but it sits there in that period. Then there's December 15th through the end of the year. We have the year-end rollover issue where we can't fly the shuttle over the end of the year. And then after that, we pop into the next year. And then there's an ATV and an HTV that sit next year. And if we want to move the HTV with the arm, you remember that before, we can't dock a shuttle with the HTV down on the node. We actually have to pick the HTV up and stick it temporarily up on top on the zenith port while we would bring a shuttle up. We could do that, and then that would open up sometime in February, available for a launch. But if we don't do that with the HTV, then that pushes us probably to the end of February. So the bottom line of all that discussion is probably November 27th through December 8th is that little sliver of a window that you were looking at.
Tiny one between the 12th and the 15th.
And probably another,
do that.
and depending on what we do with Soyuz, that might expand a little bit, and then there's maybe another little window in December, probably 3 or 4 days in December.
Just to follow that real quickly, it sounds like there's pretty much zero opportunity in January.
January is pretty full with the HTV and the ATV activities that are going to occur. ATV occurs in December, then HTV occurs in January.
Okay, thanks. And Bill, I was wondering if you could give me an idea of what Russian elements are still going to be added to the International Space Station after this particular mission and maybe after the U.S. assembly is complete. And I was actually curious about your views about the proposal to invest in commercial crew transportation to the International Space Station if you think that the commercial folks can do it better, cheaper, faster than the government guys.
Okay. In terms of Russian modules, the major module is their MLM module, which is it's about the size of an FGB. In fact, it was I think the FGB structural test article, and I think that's scheduled currently on the manifest sometime in the 2012 timeframe, but that's kind of moved around a little bit. But the components that are on the outside of the MRM-1 are some components that are already being pre-positioned for that other larger module that comes up. That's the European arm and then the radiator that would be potentially added to that laboratory module. So you could think of it as another major logistics or major laboratory module for the Russians. They treat both MRM-1 and MRM-2 as mini logistics modules, and then this is a bigger module in similar size to what's in the FGB. And those are the things that I'm aware of from a Russian standpoint. In terms of commercial crew, I think, there's lots of challenges with our business. It's not easy to do these activities. It's not easy to design spacecraft. We'll work with them to help them as much as we can. I think it would be wrong to totally let them go work all this in a vacuum without some assistance from us. We've learned a lot over these years of what works and doesn't work. We'd like to be in a cooperative arrangement with them where we can help them and share some of our lessons learned, the real lessons we've learned, and help them actually deliver some hardware to us. So I think we've got some work to do with them and work with them. I think they can bring some creative things to us. They have some potential maybe in contracting. They can do things a little bit faster than we can do. They can do some other things with a little bit less overhead than we do, and in that sense they can be a little more efficient. But the technical challenges are real. It doesn't matter who's flying. The safety challenges are real. It doesn't matter who's flying. We've got to figure out a way we work collectively with them to buy down risk to get us the capability to have a U.S. crew transportation capability for our crews in the future, and we'll figure out a way to go do that in the next couple of years.
Okay, let's take a question from our phone bridge, please.
Thank you. This is Tarek Malik from Space.com. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Tarek.
Great, thank you. Yes, I have just a few short questions, I think, for Bill and then for Mike. Bill, I'm just curious if there's an estimated cost for the Russian module in Atlantis' payload bay, and what types of U.S. hardware you've managed to pack in there, if it's just loading things in bags and cramming them in, or if there's, I guess, more science to it than that.
Yeah, I don't know the cost of the Russian module. I don't know if that's even available to us, but we'd have to probably talk to Energia or Russia to get the cost of the module, so I don't have a number for that. The things that are in there are mostly stored in bags and stowed on the inside. They're things that we could soft stow and pack and store on the inside. So there's nothing that's uniquely, that I'm aware of, that's uniquely hard mounted or mounted on the inside. But it's critical stuff that we need. It's got some logistics stuff for us. It's got some basic supplies. It's also got some research stuff for us. So it's got a mixture of things that we needed to go fly. Thank you.
And for Mike, you mentioned that the team is real focused on this flight, even though it is the last for Atlantis. I'm curious if there are any maybe unofficial commemorations or celebrations the team is doing at each of the milestones to kind of just mark Atlantis' potential last flight into space. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good question. In fact, Angie Brewer, the flow director for Atlantis, has led a team looking at what we can do as a space center and as a program to commemorate the last several flights. And so it's not limited to just Atlantis. But the types of things we've done, you saw for rollout, we had the big xenon lights on the vehicle. We invited workers' families to come out to the rollout and be right up next to the crawlerway to see the vehicle. It just so happened that because we delayed a couple of days that the crew was in town, and Ken Ham and his crew came out and shook hands with the families along the crawlerway, and that was special for them. We have different photo opportunities for the workers as the vehicles roll out of the OPF and out of the VAB, and then once we get to the launch pad, we've scheduled quite a few photos out there. So there's a variety of things that we're doing consciously to celebrate the last several flows, and Angie's in charge of all that, and she's doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tarek. We're back here at Kennedy, and Bill Harwood.
Well, just one more manifest question for those of us, I guess, who are obsessed with manifest. when you look at 134 and that little sliver out there of availability, and of course we don't know what's going to happen to the AMS yet and if they're really going to get here in August, how does processing 133 play into all of that from a CSCS standpoint? In other words, if 134 slipped to late February, can you launch 133 in mid-September and still provide the CSCS capability you need, or would that plus payload issues move that flight into October, which is what everybody seems to think?
Yeah, I think from a CSCS standpoint, we'll have about the same capability we do on station now, so that's roughly 125 to 150 days. So that would allow it to move almost wherever it needs to move, and it wouldn't drag 133 with it. So from a CSCS standpoint, I don't think that would cause to move it.
Well, there's payload issues with 133, not necessarily the MPLM or whatever it's going to be, but the things you want to add to that flight. Can you do that and launch in September?
Yeah, I think, again, if Mike was here, he would tell you that there's not much margin to that schedule. They're working some large ORUs, replacement units, some of the advanced life support, the life support systems we've talked about. They would like to get those there. They're on pretty much very tight schedules. So again, we'll see how the teams do and how they work the schedules. Right now, it fits on September 16th. If they run into any problems, it may force a movement somewhere, and we'll let you know as soon as that happens. But right now, everything kind of fits on the overall schedules.
Marcia?
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press for Bill. Do you need to know any time this year whether you get an extra flight for Atlantis or any shuttle for that matter? I mean, what happens, I know you get it ready for a launch on need, but how long can you just keep going without really knowing whether you really do have a flight for that one?
You know, I think we'd like to know in the June kind of time frame, because if you think about it, we would have to assign a crew. We got to do some crew training. We kind of know what cargo we would fly, you know, and so we've got that kind of figured out. But if we're really going to do this, we need to know sometime in June.
Do you even have a launch on need crew picked out for that one yet? Do you know which team would be?
I don't know.
Okay. And lastly, for this flight, a question about this flight. You say you couldn't get off till the end of June. Is that basically the Soyuz launch that's eaten up that month, or is there something else going
There's
on?
another beta
Oh,
cutout
there is.
in June.
When
Yeah.
is that, do you know?
Yeah, we can tell you that. Yeah, it's June, well, I gotta be careful. But it's like June 12th to June 29th, somewhere in that time frame. So it's the latter part of June. And so the first part of June gets tied up with the Soyuz activities, and then the later part of June is the beta cutout.
James?
James Dean from Florida Today. You guys have talked about the great work done by the processing teams. I'm just wondering for Mike or whomever would like to comment, if you could just comment a little more generally about, as we get into the final, what's scheduled to be the final processing flow for each vehicle, this unique 4 or 5 month process that it takes to get a space shuttle ready for launch. Obviously, much of that work done by our workforce here, a lot of it behind the scenes, and that, is going to stop for, possibly years before another vehicle is ready. Can you just talk a little bit about that unique event, a processing flow?
Well, I'll start off, and the other guys can fill in. Unique processing flows and requirements, no. We're going to be processing the vehicle the same way we processed all 131, I believe it is. The guys, as I've said before, the guys, when they're working on the vehicle, are absolutely committed to their tasks, and they do them properly. If you start getting the question about are they distracted, when they're working on the vehicle, no. When they're in the lunchroom, they're talking about the future. That's when they start to vent a little bit about the end of the program. But when we're working on the vehicle, they're absolutely focused and dedicated to that machine. Nothing special, no special processing requirements for the last missions. Probably a lot of hugs, at the end of the day. But when we're working on the vehicles, it's a standard flow.
Irene?
And I
Oh, I'm
would just
sorry.
add a little bit. The other thing that's going on too is like in New Orleans, the external tank folks, right? We have a tank en route here, right, through the Gulf.
It's your Sunday.
It's going to come here on Sunday, and they've done a phenomenal job of getting the tanks ready. And in fact, they're actually beating some of the schedules, the delivery schedules. And so you talk about here, but it's program wide. I mean, everybody is really focused, and they're very very excited about getting to do what they normally get to do, and they know about the end, but they're really enjoying as much as they can this last activity to do something that's really special. So I see that the tank guys, I see the solid rocket motor guys. It's program wide, and this is a really special workforce that has this ability to stay focused, to compartmentalize, and is what Mike was describing, that when it comes time to do this work, we need to go do it. And I'm trying from kind of our perspective is to kind of keep things as normal as we can. You know, there's going to be lots of folks that want to do all kinds of big celebrations and different things and do things different ways. I want the teams to figure out what they want to do, and we're going to keep it kind of low key, and we're going to just kind of stay focused, and it's just another shuttle flight. We're going to do the absolute best we can and just keep moving forward. And then, but in your heart, kind of remember that this is a special time and cherish a little bit what you're getting to go do, because it is a unique experience that may not be repeated for a little while. But the best thing we can do is to keep focused, keep flying. That assures that there's a future and ready to move forward. And the team really knows that, and they are phenomenal in doing what they're doing. And it's not just here, but it's program wide. And the spirit is really strong across the team.
Yeah, I just might add a little bit to that, if I may, Bill. You know, the spirit is absolutely strong, and what I'd like to add is let's take ourselves back in time, and maybe a year or 18 months or so, when we were talking about the end of the program, and a lot of people didn't believe it, and were in denial. They thought, well, heck, you know, the program can't end. We're gonna fly forever. Well, now we know that's not the case. The program will end. People have absolutely come to grips with that. When I talked to the folks on the floor of the processing facilities, and I'm sure it was the same at MAF and in Utah, they know the end is coming, and they're making their plans. And so we've gotten past the denial stage of change, and we're into the exploration and the acceptance change, and that's good. That's very healthy for the people to go through that process, and we're there. Again, that does not change the way they work on the vehicle. It's just their mental capacity to have accepted the fact that the program's going to end, and they need to make plans for the future.
Irene?
John, is the TRIDAR going to be flying on 132? And Bill, are there any proposals to use that for the automated docking for any vehicles going up to station?
Yeah, no, TRIDAR is a Discovery-only capability. We only wired up Discovery to fly it. And we collected a bunch of data this last flight, and it could be used in the future for some kind of an autonomous rendezvous and docking, and the teams are very happy to have that data.
Yeah, and we're flying another device, I think, on the, I don't know which vehicle it is now, but it's the station, or excuse me, it's the Constellation Program's device. It's a flash LiDAR that does a similar kind of function as the TRIDAR. And then we've also flown a device for SpaceX, Dragon Eye, which is a rendezvous prox ops device. So what's neat is we've used the shuttle to fly essentially 3 different sensor suites. We also flew one on the Hubble mission. It was a Goddard payload. I don't remember what it was called, but it was another rendezvous prox ops sensor. So we've actually flown 4 different rendezvous prox ops sensors on the shuttle. We've flown the TRIDAR a couple times, so we've got repeat data on it. But we're able to now kind of compare performance of these different devices, see which one looks best, which one gives us good data. So I think out of this, we'll take a look at all this data, and we'll probably settle on some standards across the program for all potential spacecraft, and we may home in on some rendezvous prox ops sensors out of this work. So again, the neat thing that I see from the shuttle is the shuttle legacy has kind of really continued forward. We're actually paving the way by understanding what rendezvous prox ops sensors will be used in the future, and hopefully out of this we can actually pick a standard that will then become a standard for all folks. You know, we're working on an international docking standard. I don't know if you know that, but we're trying to get a docking system that will be used, will be the standard for all spacecraft in the future. And the idea then is, if somebody wants to use this docking system to come up and dock, then you have compatibility between various spacecrafts no matter who builds them. So we're going to try to publish at least, we're fairly close, we're probably about another 2 months away from actually getting a standard that the Russians agreed to, the Europeans agreed to, and NASA agrees to as a standard. And then we hopefully put that out, then that gets adopted by other countries, and then we have compatibility between various spacecraft. And then if we can then standardize the rendezvous prox ops sensor, we've now then even made it better. So we're starting to begin the infrastructure to put in place to actually have an international capability to have spacecraft dock with each other and mate up in space.
And the last question I had for you is, how are you operating, I guess, with all your contingency planning, if you get a continuing resolution budget, which theoretically, I guess, would keep shuttle funded, or does it end because of some other regulation, and going forward with the or if the budget that the White House has proposed is passed, that kind of is a whole different set of plans and programs. If you could just maybe kind of outline all the I guess all the different modes that you're kind of preparing to operate in. Thanks.
Yeah, when we get continuing resolution, you can either continue at your FY10 budget levels, or if there's a general consensus that the FY11 budget levels are the appropriate level, they may approve the continuing resolution to be at that level. So we could, at the end of this year, if even in continuing resolution, get our shuttle budget cut back to the levels that were planned for 2011 in the president's budget. So what we're doing, like always, is we've got about 15 different options and 15 different budget levels and different manifests and whatever, and we're being prepared, and we're asking all the what-if questions to be prepared to be ready to support whatever we're given. So, you know, it's not a whole lot different than my Washington political budget world is not a whole lot different than my spacecraft technical world, right? You never know what hardware is going to not work at the right time, so you're building contingency plans. I don't ever discuss those contingency plans with you, because then you publish them and then I get in trouble. So but we've got them, and we're doing exactly the same thing in the budget world. We have figured out almost any scenario we can end up with, and I've got John and Suf and the rest of the space ops team, the space communication guys, the launch vehicle guys, all working all these various cases, and we're prepared as best we can for whatever we get. And if they pick one that's not one of our scenarios, we probably have covered the waterfront with enough different scenarios that we can easily morph one of those scenarios into whatever they give us. So again, it's what we get every day with life. You never know what you're going to get the next day, but if you're really prepared and you've built those contingency plans, you're ready to go execute, and that's what we're doing in space ops. So it's operations as usual. It's not too big a deal to us. We've been through lots of exciting times in the past at budget cycles, and this one's not a whole lot different to us at this point.
All right. Seeing no further questions, we're going to wrap things up with a reminder that the STS-132 astronauts will arrive here at Kennedy Space Center for launch on Monday, May 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, a reminder that the launch has been set officially today for May 14th, 2:20 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can keep up with all the happenings on STS-132 by going to our web, www.nasa.gov/shuttle. Thank you very much.